The night shift on the outer listening station was usually quiet, almost silent. The kind of silence that made a person feel as if the entire universe had gone still. The technician on duty was used to this silence. He had spent many nights surrounded by blinking lights, soft hums of old machines, and long hours of routine checks that rarely led to anything important. But even though most shifts were uneventful, he never allowed himself to relax completely. Part of him believed that space was too big, too strange, and too full of secrets to stay quiet forever. And on this particular night, he was proven right. It started with a tiny flicker on one of the long-range scanners. At first, he thought it was just interference from drifting ice or passing dust. The station's equipment was not new, and the scanners often produced little bursts of static that looked suspicious for a moment before correcting themselves. But this time, the flicker didn't fade. Instead, it repeated. Then it repeated again. The technician leaned forward and looked closely. A pattern was forming. And patterns meant intention. He tapped a command into the console and replayed the signal. It came through as a faint pulse mixed with static, almost like a heartbeat struggling to push through thick noise. It wasn't strong. It wasn't clean. But it was repeating at a fixed interval. That alone made his pulse rise. Natural objects didn't repeat with such precision. Random bursts never stayed consistent. Something or someone was trying to reach out. He checked the direction of the source. It was coming from a far sector, an area with no known colonies, no official outposts, no human settlements of any kind. That meant the source wasn't human. The realization felt heavy, like the air had suddenly thickened around him. For years, humanity had known other species existed, but to receive an actual distress call from an unknown one was rare. Many alien civilizations were cautious, private, or too far away to risk reaching out. Some feared humans due to stories that spread across the galaxy, calling them Deathworlders, a dramatic term used for species from extremely dangerous planets. Humans rarely argued with the nickname. Earth was indeed a difficult place to evolve. But because of that difficulty, humans were tough, adventurous, and stubborn enough to push into deep space. The technician played the signal again. It grew clearer as his software filtered it. A shaky rhythm. A pause. Another rhythm. Then a long tone. He didn't understand the meaning yet, but he could tell it was urgent. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't an introduction. It was a plea for help. His heart began to race, but his movements stayed calm. He alerted command and transmitted his analysis. The supervisors on the station responded quickly, asking for confirmation. He gave them everything he had, showing them that the signal stayed stable over multiple scans. The station lights changed colors, indicating a priority alert. The quiet night was suddenly filled with movement. Doors opened. Officers walked rapidly through corridors. Old screens brightened as systems activated that hadn't been used in months. Within minutes, the supervisors forwarded the evidence to the central human fleet. A decision had to be made. Humans did not ignore distress calls, not even from unknown species. It was part of an unspoken rule humans carried through the stars. If someone was calling for help, they answered. Many alien cultures admired this spirit, though some feared it because humans often brought strong determination with them. When humans responded to something, they responded fully. Back on the listening station, the technician watched as the signal stabilized. More data came through. Coordinates began to form in the decoded results. The location pointed to a drifting area near a hazardous debris field created by an old cosmic collision. It was not a place any ship would choose to be unless something had gone terribly wrong. That fact alone confirmed the seriousness of the call. Hours passed with constant updates. A rescue vessel was assembled and launched with speed that impressed even the technician, who had seen many operations in the past. The crew on that vessel was chosen carefully. Scientists who understood alien communication, engineers skilled in repairing damaged ships, medical teams trained to treat unfamiliar biological forms, and security officers who would ensure that everyone remained safe in case the situation was more complicated than it appeared. It wasn't unusual for rescue missions to include protective units, not because humans expected danger, but because deep space rarely offered second chances. The vessel left human space with a clear mission: find whoever sent the signal, determine their condition, provide help if possible, avoid conflict unless absolutely necessary. Humanity had learned too many lessons already about acting too quickly or making assumptions. This time, they approached with caution, but also with genuine concern. They wanted to reach whoever was out there before it was too late. Meanwhile, the technician stayed on duty, monitoring every change. He felt strangely connected to the unknown senders. He imagined them in a failing ship, frightened, unsure if anyone would hear them. He imagined their relief when humans arrived. That hope gave him energy, even as the long shift stretched on. He kept thinking about how extraordinary it was that across the massive emptiness of the cosmos, two different species could find each other through a thin thread of sound. As the human rescue vessel neared the coordinate zone, the signal became more unstable. This worried everyone. It meant the source was weakening, possibly failing. Communications officers on the rescue vessel adjusted their receivers. The updates flowed back to the station. The technician watched these updates with growing tension. Every new reading made him feel like he was holding his breath. Then there was a burst of static from the ship's report. For a moment, the signal vanished entirely. Everyone feared the worst. But a few seconds later, the signal flickered back into existence, weaker, but still repeating. It was like listening to a voice that refused to give up, even when fading. The rescue vessel increased speed. They pushed their engines harder than planned, straining the systems, but no one slowed down. People didn't speak much on board. They were focused, determined. The silence came not from fear, but from purpose. After a long approach, the human vessel entered the debris field. The crew navigated carefully through drifting rocks, old metal fragments, and chunks of ice reflecting faint starlight. Then they saw it. A small alien craft, clearly damaged. Its hull was cracked in several places. Lights inside flickered weakly. It was barely holding together. The distress signal came directly from that ship. The crew moved fast but steady. Their scanners detected life inside, though the readings were unstable. The alien survivors were alive, but not in good condition. A boarding team suited up and prepared to enter. They checked their equipment and made sure they carried medical supplies instead of weapons. The goal was rescue, not confrontation. When the humans entered the alien craft, the air inside was thin and cold. Emergency lights flashed weakly. The smell of burnt wires and leaking coolant filled the narrow corridors. The humans followed their scanners and soon found the first survivor. The alien looked fragile, with thin limbs and trembling movements, clearly struggling to survive in the failing environment. Its eyes widened when it saw the humans. It didn't appear aggressive. It appeared exhausted, confused, and relieved all at once. The rescue team communicated calmly, using simple gestures to show they meant no harm. They offered stabilizing oxygen and warmth. The alien accepted without resistance. More survivors were located deeper inside the ship, all weak, frightened, and barely conscious. The humans acted quickly. They used their portable atmosphere generators to create breathable air. They carried the survivors one by one to safety. As they worked, the aliens watched them with a mixture of surprise and disbelief. It didn't matter that humans were called Deathworlders in distant stories. In this moment, The humans behaved exactly as they always had in crisis situations. They focused on saving lives. By the time the last survivor was moved onto the human vessel, the alien ship was close to shutting down completely. The humans withdrew and sealed the hatch. Then they pulled away from the debris field with the rescued aliens secured inside warm, stable chambers. Back on the listening station, the technician finally allowed himself to sit back in his chair and breathe. He had felt every second of the rescue as if he were on the ship himself. Now, with updates confirming the survivors were safe, he felt a wave of relief. The night that began with quiet stillness had turned into the start of something much larger. The technician didn't know what future events this rescue would set in motion. He didn't know what kind of story would unfold between humans and this unknown species. But he knew one thing with certainty. The universe had called out to humanity for help, and humans had answered without hesitation. That alone was enough to make the long silence of space feel less lonely. The human rescue vessel moved steadily through space, carrying the fragile survivors who had been pulled from the damaged alien craft. Inside the medical bay, soft lights glowed gently so the aliens wouldn't feel overwhelmed. The atmosphere was warmer than before, carefully adjusted to match readings taken from the alien ship. Even though the humans didn't fully understand the biology of these beings yet, they did everything possible to make the environment safe and comfortable. The survivors looked exhausted. Their bodies were thin, their skin pale from long exposure to cold and low pressure. Some lay still with eyes half open, trying to understand where they were. Others looked around slowly, studying the humans who walked between the medical stations. There was confusion in their eyes, but also something like hope. They had expected their journey to end in silence and darkness, far from home. But instead, they found themselves surrounded by people who were working nonstop to help them. The human medical team stayed calm and gentle. They spoke softly, even though they knew the aliens couldn't understand the words yet. Calm voices helped ease fear, no matter the species. One medic offered warm fluid in a transparent container to one of the aliens, showing how to drink by taking a sip himself. The alien hesitated, then slowly followed the example. Its hands trembled so much that the medic helped support the cup. The alien gave a small sound, almost like a sigh, as the warm liquid eased the strain in its body. Communication officers on the ship worked to understand the aliens' language patterns. They played recorded sounds, compared tones, and tried to identify repeating structures. Nothing made sense yet, but every new sound gave them more clues. Some alien words were soft and airy, others sharp and quick. It was a language that didn't match any known species, which meant humanity had stumbled upon a civilization they had never met before. That alone made the rescue mission historic. While the medical bay kept steady with quiet movement, the command deck felt heavier with tension. Screens displayed readings from the debris field, showing the broken alien ship drifting farther into a dangerous zone. The place seemed unstable, full of sharp rock fragments, frozen metal, and unpredictable currents. The captain of the human vessel, a calm and practical figure, knew they had arrived just in time. A delay of even a few hours might have meant no survivors left to rescue. Even though the aliens were safe for now, the crew knew this was only the beginning. They still didn't know what had caused the disaster. The damage on the alien craft looked violent and unnatural. Large sections were torn open rather than broken apart by collision. Scorch marks lined the outer hull, hinting at some kind of attack. The rescue team had noticed these signs while boarding, but they had no time to investigate deeper then. Saving lives had been the priority. Now that the immediate danger had passed, people on the ship began trying to piece together the story of what had happened. Technicians reviewed recordings from the alien ship's data cores. Engineers studied the debris collected on the hull. Military officers discussed possibilities quietly, keeping their voices steady so no one would panic. A mystery like this demanded careful handling. The last thing they wanted was to assume the wrong thing and create fear where none was needed. Meanwhile, the aliens themselves slowly started understanding that the humans truly meant no harm. One of the aliens, who seemed slightly stronger than the others, sat upright on a medical bed. It watched every movement around it with deep attention. Its eyes were large and expressive, reflecting the soft lights of the room. When a human approached to check its vitals, the alien didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, it raised one hand in a slow, cautious gesture that looked like a greeting. The medic paused, unsure what the gesture meant, but responded by offering a small nod. The alien tilted its head, observing the gesture, then gave a faint nod back. It was a tiny moment, but it carried weight. The first sign of trust. Later, the same alien attempted to speak. The sound came out weak and shaky, a blend of strange tones and long breaths. The humans didn't understand the words, but they understood the emotion. The alien was trying to communicate gratitude, fear, and something else, maybe warning. The communication officers replayed the recording over and over again, trying to match parts of the sound with fragments from the original distress signal. Slowly, patterns emerged. One sequence repeated often, both in the signal and in the alien's attempts to speak. The officers marked that sequence with high importance. It could be a name, a location, or a description of the disaster. As hours passed, the rescued aliens regained a bit of strength. Their movements became steadier, their breathing easier. Some could now hold up their heads without support. A few tried to stand, but quickly sat back down, still weak from whatever ordeal they had endured. The humans moved carefully around them, offering blankets, water, and gentle gestures of reassurance. Whenever the aliens stared for too long at a human, someone would give a friendly smile or a small wave. These simple, human habits helped break the fear more effectively than complex technology ever could. The captain eventually visited the medical bay. The aliens watched this new figure with cautious eyes. The captain kept a respectful distance at first, speaking softly, even though communication wasn't yet possible. He simply explained that they were safe, that no one would harm them, and that humans would do everything possible to help. Even though the aliens couldn't understand the words, the kindness in his voice reached them clearly. The alien who had tried to speak earlier slowly raised its hand again. The captain mirrored the gesture. For a moment, silence filled the room, a kind of calm understanding that didn't need translation. After observing this, one of the engineers quietly said to the communications officer, "I think they know we're here to help." The officer nodded with relief. Later, more information arrived from the listening station that had first detected the distress call. The decoding team had managed to clean the signal even further, revealing more details. The repeating pattern in the signal wasn't just a call for help. It also contained coordinates of another location, the aliens' original destination before their ship was attacked. The humans on board studied these coordinates with concern. The point wasn't far from a region known for heavy gravitational anomalies and unexplained disappearances. This raised more questions than answers. On the ship, some crew members quietly discussed what kind of threat the aliens might have been running from. Was it a natural disaster? A predatory species? A rogue faction? The galaxy was large enough for all kinds of dangers, and humans had encountered many of them in their travels. Still, the damage on the alien ship didn't look natural. Something had hit it with precision, but the captain didn't want his crew jumping to conclusions. He reminded them to stay focused on the survivors rather than assumptions. Saving lives came first. Explanations could come later. By the next cycle, the aliens had regained enough strength to attempt more forms of communication. They pointed to objects, mimicked gestures, and repeated certain sounds. The humans reciprocated, showing pictures, drawing shapes, and speaking slowly. The process was slow but hopeful. Both sides were learning. Little by little dot, at one point, an alien made a sound that seemed like a name. The humans repeated it carefully, trying not to mispronounce. The alien nodded weakly, clearly pleased that they had tried. Moments like that made the crew feel a quiet sense of pride. Despite the differences in shape, voice, and world of origin, simple cooperation was possible. The crew didn't treat this as just a mission. They treated it as something deeply human. Helping strangers was not new for them. Humanity had always been driven by a mix of curiosity and compassion. That same spirit was now guiding every action on the ship. The aliens noticed this too. Even though they still looked fragile, there was less fear in their eyes now. They seemed to realize that these humans, despite the fierce stories surrounding their species, were not here to dominate or frighten. They were here because someone had cried out for help. And humans couldn't ignore that kind of call. As the ship prepared to move closer to the coordinates found in the decoded message. The atmosphere on board shifted from worry to determination. The crew felt a growing sense of responsibility. They had saved the aliens from immediate danger, but now they had to understand the truth behind the attack, not for curiosity, but to make sure the survivors stayed safe. The journey was far from over. Something had forced these aliens to send a desperate signal into the void, something strong enough to tear apart their ship. And whatever it was, the humans were going to find out, not because they sought conflict, but because it was in their nature to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The aliens, though weak, watched the humans prepare with quiet curiosity and a growing sense of trust. They didn't know yet what humans could really do. They only knew that these strangers had pulled them from the edge of death. And sometimes, that was enough to begin a bond that could change everything. The human rescue vessel drifted through space at a steady pace, guided by the new coordinates recovered from the distress signal. The crew didn't know what they would find there. Maybe answers. Maybe danger. Maybe nothing at all. But every person on board felt the same quiet determination. They had saved the survivors. Now they needed to understand what had driven those survivors to send such a desperate call into the dark. The aliens were recovering slowly. They no longer looked as close to collapse as before, but they were still fragile. Some could sit upright without help. Others could walk a few steps, holding on to support rails installed by the humans. Their movements were gentle, cautious, as if every motion might break them. The humans noticed the physical differences more clearly now. These beings were clearly not built for harsh worlds. Their limbs were thin, their bones probably light, and their skin looked almost translucent under medical lights. They were the opposite of humans, who were used to gravity, storms, tough climates, and unpredictable conditions on their home planet, to the humans. These aliens seemed like creatures shaped by peaceful environments, soft winds, and low gravity. The contrast made the crew even more protective of them. It felt natural. When stronger beings find weaker ones in danger, instinct pushes them to shield them. The humans didn't think twice about it, but even with the progress, real communication was still a challenge. The aliens spoke in complex tones. Some sounds were almost musical, others sharp like clicks. The communication officers were trying to map out patterns, building a basic dictionary, one sound at a time. Every attempt brought them a little closer. One of the officers played a short clip of the distress signal and compared it with recordings of the aliens speaking. The aliens listened carefully, and one of them pointed to the speaker with urgency. It repeated a sound that came from the recording, its voice trembling. The officer nodded, writing it down. It was becoming clear that the repeating pattern in the original signal wasn't a random message. It was important. Maybe a location. Maybe a warning. On the command deck, the captain and senior crew studied the map on the main screen. The new coordinates were highlighted in a dim blue glow. The area wasn't well charted. It sat near the border of a region that human ships rarely explored due to unpredictable gravitational activity. It wasn't dangerous enough to be forbidden, but it was unstable enough to be avoided unless necessary. The captain stared at the map for a long moment. Something didn't feel right. Space was full of mysteries, but it was unusual for a peaceful, delicate species to be found drifting alone near such a hazardous region without support. Something must have forced them there. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, the aliens began interacting more willingly with the humans. One of the humans offered a small glowing device that displayed simple images. It showed planets, ships, stars, basic visuals that could be understood without language. The aliens watched closely. When an image of Earth appeared, the human tapped his chest and then pointed to the image. The alien slowly mirrored the gesture. It was learning, or trying to. Then the alien pointed at the image of Earth, then at the display showing the map of the region they came from. It repeated a soft sound. The human didn't understand, but he sensed a story hidden in that sound. Something had happened out there, something that pushed these beings far from their home. Another alien made a motion with its hands, bringing them together and then pulling them apart. It repeated the motion several times, breathing fast. The human watching it realized the alien was not describing something peaceful. The motion looked like destruction, breaking apart, scattering. The human nodded slowly to show he understood the emotion behind the gesture, even if the details were unclear. Hours later, the communications team made a small breakthrough. They identified a repeated word used both in the distress call and by the aliens' desperate attempts to speak. When they compared it with gestures the aliens were making, they came to a chilling possibility. The word might mean danger, or enemy, or destruction. Something harmful. Something that chased them. The humans shared this discovery with the captain. He listened quietly, then looked toward the medical bay where the rescued aliens were resting. He saw one of them sleeping, curled up under a warm blanket that looked far too heavy for their delicate frame. Another sat awake, staring at the soft lights, eyes full of worry even in rest. The captain knew what it meant. Whatever forced these beings into danger might still be out there. And humans might need to face it if they wanted to protect these survivors properly. As the ship continued toward the coordinates, tension built slowly but steadily. People walked with a bit more focus. Conversations grew quieter. The rescue mission had become something bigger. Everyone could feel it, but amid the uncertainty, humans still kept their usual warmth. Some crew members joked softly with each other to keep things light. Others brought small treats or warm drinks to the weary communication officers working non-stop. Humans were good at handling stress with small acts of kindness, and the aliens noticed these behaviors. One alien, who seemed older than the others, observed two humans sharing a laugh in the corridor. Even though it couldn't understand the words, the gentle tone and relaxed expressions eased its fear. It tapped the arm of a human standing nearby and made a sound that resembled curiosity. The human smiled and nodded, showing that everything was fine. This simple exchange helped bridge the gap further. Before long, the ship approached the designated region. The sensors detected faint traces of energy signatures. Something had been there not long ago. The crew activated the long-range scanners. The images that appeared made everyone lean closer. At the far edge of the readout was a faint trail of debris. Something had been destroyed. Not a natural event. Not an accident. The fragments were too clean, too sharp, too evenly scattered. It looked like a ship had been struck with intent. Maybe more than one. The aliens, brought to the command deck to see the scans, reacted instantly. Their eyes widened. Their bodies tensed. One covered its face with trembling hands. Another let out a long, trembling sound that felt like sorrow. Whatever was on the screen, they recognized it. The captain spoke gently, lowering his voice. Even without translation, his tone tried to say, "We're here. You're safe." But the aliens pointed at the screen and repeated the same word the communications team had identified. The word for danger, or enemy, or destruction. The humans understood. Something had hunted these beings. Something powerful enough to tear apart their ships. Something cruel enough to send them fleeing across the stars. The crew exchanged troubled looks. The atmosphere changed again. This time not with fear, but with resolve. Humans weren't the type to turn away when someone weaker was being threatened. Their instincts ran deep. Protect the helpless. Stand against danger. Fight only when necessary, but fight hard if it came to it. The ship moved closer to the debris trail. Scanners picked up faint biological traces, probably from more ships that hadn't survived. The crew grew quiet. Even though they didn't know these aliens personally, seeing evidence of so much loss touched them deeply. In the medical bay, one of the aliens curled up in distress. A human caretaker sat beside it, offering a hand for support. The alien hesitated, then reached out with its thin fingers. The contact was light, almost weightless, but it meant everything. It showed how deeply the aliens were beginning to trust the humans. As the ship followed the trail further, they saw something else. A faint energy signature moving slowly in the distance. Not a natural object. Not debris. Something alive. Something active. The crew focused the scanners. The image sharpened. A large structure appeared on the screen, dark, jagged, and silent. It didn't match any known species design. The aliens reacted with sheer terror, hiding behind the humans or covering their faces. The captain stood still, staring at the structure. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was connected to the attack. He also knew one thing with complete certainty. Humanity was now involved. Whether they planned to be or not, they had answered a distress signal. They had saved survivors. And now they had stepped into the path of something dangerous. But the humans did not back away. They leaned forward, studying the structure, preparing for whatever came next, because that was simply what humans did. When the universe turned dark, they stepped into that darkness with determination, prepared to face whatever waited there. The aliens watched them, trembling yet hopeful. They didn't know how strong humans truly were. They only saw their kindness so far. But soon, they would see something else, the reason humans were called Deathworlders. Not because they were cruel, but because they were the kind of beings who faced danger head-on. Especially when someone who couldn't defend themselves needed protection. The moment the team stepped out of the lander, the air felt different. It was thin, cold, and carried a strange metallic taste that made everyone instinctively check their suits again. The ground beneath them was dry and cracked, almost like old clay that had been abandoned under a harsh sun. But there was no sun here. Only a pale red glow coming from the planet's dying atmosphere. The human team moved slowly, scanning every direction. Even though they had prepared for danger, the silence felt heavier than they expected. There was no wind, no movement, no life, just the distant sound of their own steps echoing across the empty plain. The distress signal had come from this area, so something had to be nearby. But right now, it looked like an abandoned world. Their lead explorer raised a hand, signaling the others to halt. He tapped his wrist scanner and waited as it tried to pick up nearby energy patterns. After a few seconds, small lights flickered on the display. Something faint was ahead of them. Not natural, not random, but structured. They followed the signal through a narrow valley between jagged stone ridges. The rocks looked almost sculpted, not by tools, but by centuries of wind carving through softer layers. As they walked deeper into the valley, the temperature dropped, and the air grew stiller, almost frozen. Then they saw it. At the end of the valley stood a large structure, half buried in dirt and rock. It didn't look like a building, not in the way humans imagined one, but it also didn't seem natural. Smooth, curved surfaces made of dark metal were exposed between broken chunks of stone. Parts of it were crushed, others bent out of shape, and faint sparks flickered where damaged panels struggled to function. This was the origin of the distress signal. The team approached carefully, scanning for radiation, traps, or structural instability. The ground near the wreck showed long drag marks, suggesting the structure had crashed from the sky before sliding into the valley. The marks were old, but not ancient. Maybe years old, not centuries. One of the explorers brushed sand away from a panel, revealing symbols, thin, elegant lines that curved in patterns no human alphabet used. The marks glowed faintly, as if reacting to their presence. Another explorer took pictures and samples, but no one said much. The weight of the moment was too large. They had found alien survivors before, but this felt different. The distress signal was weak, broken, almost desperate. Someone had tried to call for help, and had kept calling until the system nearly burned out. The team circled the wreck, searching for an entrance, until they found one that was partly buried under fallen rocks. With effort, they moved debris aside, revealing a narrow opening big enough for one person to crawl through. They peered inside. Total darkness. The lead explorer turned on his helmet light and crawled in. The others followed one by one. Inside, the metal walls were twisted and cracked, but the design was graceful, almost artistic. The halls were curved rather than straight, and some surfaces emitted a soft pulse, as though attempting to power up, but failing. As they moved deeper, they heard something they did not expect: soft, irregular clicking. Not from machines, but from something alive. They froze. The clicking came from further inside, followed by a faint scraping sound. The team exchanged uneasy looks. It could be the survivors they were searching for, or it could be something dangerous. No one knew. They continued cautiously until the corridor opened into a larger chamber. Their lights swept through the room. Broken screens, overturned furniture, shattered panels, everything showed signs of a violent impact. In one corner lay a long cylindrical pod, cracked open. Inside the open pod was something that looked like a harness or support system, but no occupant. Then they heard the clicking again. This time it came from the shadows behind a pile of debris. The team slowly raised their lights. Something moved. A figure stepped out from the dark. Its body thin but tall, its limbs long and graceful, like it had been built for a world with softer gravity. Its skin was a pale silver tone, almost translucent, and faint patterns glowed beneath its surface. Its eyes were large and reflective, catching the light like still water. The humans did not move. Neither did the alien. For several seconds, the alien simply stared at them. There was exhaustion in its posture, as though it had been awake far too long. When it finally spoke, the voice was soft, trembling, and filled with disbelief. "You answered." The humans exhaled in relief. They had found their survivor. The alien took a slow step closer and raised its hand, not in threat, but in something closer to gratitude. The humans lowered their tools and tried to show they meant no harm. The lead explorer gently pressed a small translating device to the side of his helmet. It activated with a faint chime. The alien tried again, its voice clearer through the translator. "You came? From the stars? To help?" The human leader nodded. "We received your call. We came as fast as we could." The alien's shoulders trembled slightly, like it was overwhelmed. It steadied itself and gestured for them to follow. They walked deeper into the wrecked ship, through twisting corridors and collapsed rooms. The alien explained that their vessel had been carrying a small survey team when they crossed paths with something terrifying. It attacked without warning. They never saw what it was. They called it the Silent Hunter because it didn't make a sound, only appeared and destroyed everything in its path. The ship had attempted to escape, but was hit again and again until it crashed here. Most of the crew died upon impact. Only a few survived long enough to place the distress signal. The alien was the only one left now. The team listened quietly, aware of how much pain the alien had endured, but something about his story bothered them. The Silent Hunter. It didn't sound like a creature. It sounded like a machine. A weapon. They reached another chamber filled with shattered pods. The alien paused there, lowering its head. These had once held its companions. The humans remained silent, allowing the alien a moment. Finally, the alien guided them to a central control room, where a flickering screen showed the last recorded message from the ship's database. It displayed a blurred shape approaching from the darkness of space, a massive object with sharp, pointed structures extending from its sides. The image was damaged, but the size and design gave everyone chills. It wasn't natural. It was built. Not by humans. Not by this alien species, but by something else entirely. The human team exchanged serious looks. Whatever had attacked this vessel might still be out there. The alien turned toward them. I did not know. Anyone would answer. I thought my people were gone, and that help would never come. The lead explorer stepped closer. You're not alone. We're taking you with us. You'll be safe. The alien's expression softened, almost relieved. But before anyone could relax, the scanners on the human suits began to beep. Slowly at first, then faster. The human leader checked his display, and his eyes widened. Something was approaching the valley, outside, fast, very fast. The team immediately prepared to move. They helped the alien toward the exit of the ship and retraced their steps through the damaged corridors. Every second, the beeping grew louder. When they reached the outside, the sky above the valley had changed. A shadow passed across the red-tinted clouds, large and moving silently. The lander's crew sent urgent messages asking what was happening. But the answer was already clear. The Silent Hunter had returned. A massive dark shape descended through the clouds, sleek and sharp like a blade slicing the air. There was no roar, no hum, no engine noise, just complete silence as it drifted lower. The alien froze, fear tightening its posture. The humans pulled it behind cover and prepared to defend themselves. The enemy ship hovered above the valley for a moment, scanning the wrecked vessel as if searching for something specific. Then its attention shifted. It found them. The humans signaled their lander to power up emergency shields. The Silent Hunter angled itself, lining up a shot. The team pushed the alien forward, running toward the exit of the valley as fast as they could. The ground shook as a beam of blinding light cut into the wreck behind them, vaporizing metal and rock alike. There was no more doubt. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. This was a fight to survive, and the humans, the Deathworlders, were not going to back down. They had answered the call. Now they had to defend the one who sent it. The humans ran through the valley with the alien between them, the ground shaking under each silent blast from the massive ship overhead. Even though the enemy made almost no sound, the destruction it caused was impossible to ignore. Rocks exploded behind them, dust clouds filled the air, and broken pieces of the alien wreck scattered like scattered leaves in a storm. The alien stumbled once, drained and afraid, but the lead explorer grabbed its arm and kept it moving. There was no time to rest, no time to look back. They had to reach the lander before the Silent Hunter closed in. The valley walls narrowed ahead, forming a natural tunnel. The explorers slipped inside, taking cover as another blast hit the ground just outside. The shockwave rolled through the tunnel, making their ears ring. Dust fell from overhead, and the alien covered its head. Trembling Dot, the lead explorer, checked the sky through a crack in the rock. The dark enemy ship hovered above the valley entrance, its sharp edges glowing faintly like heated metal. It wasn't firing, though. It was searching. The humans knew it could detect heat, movement, and energy signatures, so they powered down non-essential gear to reduce their presence. For a few moments, silence returned, heavy and tense. The alien finally whispered, voice shaking. It came back. It found me again. One of the explorers placed a reassuring hand on its shoulder. You're safe with us. We won't let it take you. The alien's eyes shimmered in the dim light. It wanted to believe them, and their confidence gave it a little strength. When the scanners showed the enemy drifting away from the valley entrance, the team continued moving. They jogged deeper into the tunnel until they reached the other side, where the lander waited on flat ground. Its engines glowed softly, ready for a fast escape. But the moment they stepped out, the threat returned. The silent hunter swooped down from above, descending like a shadow falling over the land. It hadn't left at all. It had only repositioned. The team realized it had been tracking them the whole time. Get to the lander now. The lead explorer shouted Dot. The ground shook violently as they sprinted across the open plain. Their lander opened its side ramp automatically, but a blast struck the ground close to it, sending a wave of heat and dirt straight at the group. The alien almost fell, but two explorers caught it in time. The ramp shook, the engines flickered, and the ship warned of heavy impact. They had seconds, maybe less. The explorers pushed the alien up the ramp first. It stumbled inside, holding onto the walls for balance. The humans followed, slamming the ramp shut as the pilot shouted through the communicator. Everyone strapped in? That ship is powering up something big. The team didn't waste a moment. They secured themselves and checked the alien, who was breathing fast but still conscious. The pilot pulled back on the controls, trying to lift off before the enemy could lock onto them. The lander rose a few meters. Engines straining Dot, then the silent hunter fired again. A beam of blinding light cut through the air, hitting a rock just behind them. The explosion rocked the lander sideways. The pilot fought with the controls, barely keeping them stable. They climbed higher, shaking violently as more shots followed. Hold on. The pilot yelled. The lander shot upward, pushing through thin clouds. For a moment, it seemed like they might escape, but then warning alarms blared. The silent hunter had activated a tracking system. It was following them. The enemy ship rose from the valley floor like a silent predator. It was designed for pursuit. Its sharp wings folded inward, making it faster and more streamlined. It accelerated toward the humans with terrifying speed. Inside the lander, the alien watched the enemy ship rising after them and covered its face. It never stops. It never lets anyone escape. The lead explorer leaned toward it. We're not like those who ran before. We're not giving up. The alien stared back, surprised by the confidence. Humans were not the strongest or the tallest or the most advanced species in the galaxy. But they had something else, something others could never understand until they saw it themselves. They refused to quit. The chase rose into the thin upper layer of the atmosphere. The lander trembled under the strain. The pilot pushed the engines harder, trying to outrun the enemy long enough to reach orbit where their main ship waited. But the silent hunter was faster. It closed the distance with each passing second. A thin beam grazed the lander's side, slicing through one of the stabilizers. The ship rolled violently, and everyone inside grabbed their seats to avoid being thrown against the walls. The pilot gritted his teeth. Hold on. I'm not losing this fight. He rerouted power to the remaining stabilizers, and the lander straightened just enough to continue climbing. the alien whispered, almost in disbelief. Why? Why do you help me like this? The lead explorer kept his eyes on the display screen, showing the enemy ship behind them. Because someone called for help. That's enough. The alien had no words. To it, this was strange. To humans, it was simple. Another warning alarm blared. The silent hunter had fired tracking drones, small, silent discs that glowed with red light. They swarmed around the lander, locking onto its heat signature. The pilot knew they couldn't make it to orbit like this. Hold tight. I'm dropping the engines for a second. What? One of the explorers shouted. But the pilot slammed a control lever anyway. The lander's engines suddenly cut off, leaving them in free fall. Everyone felt weightless for a brief moment. The alien gasped and grabbed the nearest seat. The tracking drones overshot, flying ahead too fast to correct their path. The pilot restarted the engines, firing them at full thrust. The lander jerked violently, but surged forward again. The drones, confused by the sudden maneuver, circled back. Some crashed into each other. Others exploded when they crossed their own tracking beams. The team let out a collective breath. But the relief didn't last long. The silent hunter was still behind them. It fired again. This time, a wide beam that spread like a net across the sky. The pilot dove downward to avoid it, and the lander plunged toward the planet's surface. The air outside heated the hull, making it glow. They were falling fast, dangerously fast. The alien gripped the seat with shaking hands. We will crash. No, the pilot said through clenched teeth. We're landing. Landing? The alien repeated. The pilot didn't answer. He angled the lander toward a flat rocky plateau and activated emergency landing gear. The legs extended, glowing from heat. The ship hit the ground hard, bouncing once before slamming down again. Dust and sparks flew everywhere. The silent hunter swept overhead, circling them. It wasn't expecting the humans to stop. It hovered above them like a dark cloud, preparing to finish the job. Inside the lander, the team struggled to stay focused. The alien was trembling so much it could barely lift its head. What do we do now? One of the explorers asked. The lead explorer took a long breath and looked around at the others. We're Deathworlders. We don't run forever. The pilot slowly stood and opened an equipment locker. Inside were several heavy cases. Weapons? Tools? It didn't matter. They grabbed everything they could. They weren't giving up. Outside, the silent hunter positioned itself directly above the lander, charging its main weapon. A deep, glowing pulse formed under its hull. The humans exited the lander and stood on the rocky plateau. The wind whipped dust around them, but they didn't step back. They surrounded the alien, forming a protective circle. The alien looked at them, shocked. Why do you stand in front of me? You cannot stop that ship. The lead explorer answered in a calm voice. Maybe not, but we can try. And we don't leave people behind. The alien felt something shift inside its chest, something it had not felt in years. Hope not above them. The silent hunter's weapon grew brighter. The humans tightened their grip on their gear. They had faced harsh worlds. Before, they had survived deadly conditions. And now they stood between a survivor and a merciless machine. The silent hunter prepared to fire. The humans prepared to fight. The silent hunter hovered above the plateau like a giant shadow ready to strike. Its glowing core pulsed with increasing brightness, and the humans standing on the rock felt the air vibrate. Dust rose around them, blown by the power building in the enemy ship. Still, they didn't move. They stood in a tight circle around the alien, protecting it with their bodies, as if their presence alone could stop the coming attack. Inside the lander, alarms continued to scream, warning that the energy pulse could break the ship apart if it hit too close. The pilot glanced at the flashing lights and at the rest of the team outside, and he knew something had to be done right now. He stepped out of the lander and joined the others. They all looked up at the enemy ship as its weapon reached full charge. The sky above them glowed brighter and brighter, as if a small sun was forming right over their heads. The alien trembled, expecting the worst. Its entire life, nothing had ever stood up to the silent hunter. Nothing had ever stopped it. It thought this moment would be the end. But when it looked at the humans around it, not a single one seemed ready to give up. They were afraid anyone could see that, but fear wasn't controlling them. Something stronger was. A loud pulse echoed across the plateau. The silent hunter locked onto their position. The humans spread out slowly, creating a wider shield around the alien. The lead explorer stepped forward slightly, lifting a handheld device that glowed faintly. It wasn't a weapon. It was a gem or something, meant to confuse enemy targeting systems for a few seconds. It wouldn't stop the attack, but it might change its aim enough to give them a chance. The pulse fired. The light came down like a beam from the sky, hitting the jammer first. The device sparked violently, ripping itself apart in the explorer's hand. The blast knocked the entire group backward. Rocks shattered, dust exploded into the air, and heat washed over them like a wall. The alien let out a cry, covering its head with both arms. But when the dust settled, something unexpected happened. They were still alive. The blast had landed a few meters away instead of directly on them. The jammer had twisted the aim just enough to save their lives. The lead explorer's arm shook, burned and numb from the shock. But he managed to lift his head. The silent hunter adjusted its position again. It wasn't done. The ship drifted sideways, preparing another shot. This time there would be no jammer to misdirect the blast. The humans knew they had no tools left. They had no more tricks. They were exposed, and yet none of them retreated. The aliens stared at them through shaking breaths. Why? Why stay? It whispered. You could leave me. You could run. Why not save yourselves? The lead explorer's answer came slowly, but each word was clear. Running might save our bodies, but not who we are. The alien had never heard anything like that before the silent hunter could fire again. A new sound cut across the sky, a deep rising hum from far above. The humans looked up instantly. Even the silent hunter paused. A flash, far brighter than the enemy weapon, lit up the clouds. The humans' main rescue ship had finally reached orbit above the plateau. It descended with heavy engines roaring, shaking the mountains around them. Its hull glowed hot as it forced its way lower, ignoring the danger of the silent hunter just below it. The enemy ship's scanners shifted upward in confusion. The rescue ship fired its own defensive flares. They soared through the sky like brilliant stars before bursting into wide nets of crackling energy. The silent hunter tried to pull away, but the nets tangled around its hull, slowing it down. A second volley hit it, pushing it further off balance. The humans on the plateau let out a breath of relief. They didn't even realize they were holding. The silent hunter tried to climb higher, but the rescue ship released another blast, this one aimed directly at the ground, beneath the enemy vessel. The shockwave hit the silent hunter from below, flipping it slightly, sending it drifting sideways. Its weapon's charge dropped instantly as it struggled to stabilize itself. The rescue ship landed heavily on the far side of the plateau, its huge landing legs crushing loose rocks beneath them. The ramp opened and rescue teams poured out, sprinting toward the explorers. The lead explorer waved them down. Protect the alien. The silent hunter is still active. The rescue teams formed a shield around the alien, just as the silent hunter tried to fire another weak pulse. The rescue ship responded instantly, projecting a large dome-shaped barrier around the humans. The beam hit the barrier and scattered, harmlessly into the air. For the first time since the aliens' people were attacked long ago, the silent hunter failed to overpower its target. It now faced something else, something that did not fear it. Humans. The enemy ship backed away slowly. Its weapons flickered, struggling. It was damaged, confused, and losing control. Finally, with a low vibrating hum, it turned and fled, rising into the sky and disappearing far beyond the clouds. Silence fell over the plateau. The aliens stared at the empty sky where the silent hunter vanished. It wasn't moving. It wasn't speaking. It was trying to understand something that felt almost impossible to believe. It was safe. Not because it hid. Not because it ran. Because these strange beings, these Deathworlders, had stood between it and certain death. The rescue team helped the explorers climb into the ship. Some were bruised, some coughing from the smoke and dust, but all of them were alive. The alien entered last, pausing in the ramp doorway. It looked back at the plateau, its cracked surface, the burnt rocks, the dust still settling. It remembered how many times it had run before, how many places it lost, how many people it had said goodbye to. And then it looked at the humans waiting for it. Inside the ship, the alien stepped forward. As the ramp closed, the rescue ship lifted off and soared into the sky. The plateau shrank below them. The alien pressed a hand to the window, watching the ground fade. It whispered softly, almost to itself, "I thought my life was already finished. But you people, you changed everything." The lead explorer sat down beside it. "You're not alone anymore." When they reached orbit, the alien was taken to the medical bay. It didn't need complex treatment, only rest, warmth, and food. But what it needed most was something else entirely. The sense that it finally had a place where it wasn't hunted. As the ship traveled away from the planet and into safer space, messages spread through human communication channels. Reports of the enemy, reports of the rescue, and recordings of the silent hunter retreating reached stations across nearby systems. And soon, the story spread even further. Other species, hearing of what happened, felt a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. They had always called humans Deathworlders, a name that sounded dangerous and frightening. But the story growing across every channel was different. It said humans didn't use their toughness to dominate weaker species. They used it to protect them. It said humans didn't fear powerful enemies. They faced them for the sake of someone who asked for help. It said humans weren't the monsters the galaxy imagined. They were guardians. The alien recovered slowly, its spirit healing alongside its body. Every day, it walked through the ship's halls, watching humans work, laugh, argue, fix machines, carry heavy boxes, or sit quietly and think. They felt strong but also warm, brave but also gentle. For the first time, the alien realized something important. Strength wasn't only about power. Sometimes, strength was the ability to choose kindness when no one expected it. When the ship finally reached a safe harbor in human space, the alien stood at the observation deck, looking out at the bright stars ahead. The lead explorer joined it again, standing quietly beside it. The alien said, "I thought Deathworlders were something to fear." The explorer smiled slightly. "We can be scary when we need to be." "But not to me," the alien said softly. "Never to you." The alien breathed calmly, no longer shaking. For the first time in a long time, it felt safe enough to dream about the future. And somewhere out in the galaxy, the silent hunter was still out there, but so were humans. And humans always answered distress signals. Always.